Hello, Kathryn.
Hi, Don. How are you?
Fantastic. And how are you doing?
I'm doing very well as well. Thank you very much for inviting me to be on the call.
Oh, it's my deep pleasure in having you on board here. It's been a while since I've done this, actually. Last year, I was doing regular coach calls and sharing that with their community. Um, and so I think the last one was, if my memory is correct, sometime in October.
Okay.
So yeah, it's been a while. Things were busy. Of course, a lot of things been happening, and I thought, you know what, I should probably get back on this because I know it adds a lot of value to our coaches as well as soon-to-be clients that are tuning in. So I wanted to bring you on board specifically because uh, your background's very interesting. You know,
Thank you.
um, but on top of that, it's the work that you're doing with our clients that I want to shed light on, and I'll have you take the mic quickly so I don't uh, delay this introduction because I know I do. Um, but really, the purpose is to, um, share your personal experiences dealing with our clients here in South Korea, and any tips, any pointers um, that could help our coaches. That's one. Another thing is our soon-to-be clients that are um, following us and watching these videos. They get to find the type of coaches that are coaching at Donnelly and Company, and that really scratches their back and gets them to come closer to joining our program. So it does a lot of things, these calls. And so I'm very fortunate to have you on board here, Kathryn. Um, and without further ado, I'd like to have you introduce yourself to our community, um, and we'll take it from there.
Sure, I'd be happy to. Well, my name is Kathryn Kneller. As you can tell from my accent, I am British. I was born and raised in London, and that's where I've spent most of my career. I have spent the last 15 years or so working for Fortune 500 companies. And I've worked primarily in the internal or employee communications functions. So that's included a lot of strategy and planning, content creation, but also a lot of training and in particular coaching leaders to engage with and communicate with their employees more effectively. Because they were international companies, very often we found that either a large part of the audience did not speak English as a first language, and in some cases the leaders didn't speak English as a first language either. So that added a really interesting dimension to communications, and that's where I came in as a native English speaker with a strong background in communications. I also studied English at university, and so that's where I really added value. So I did that for 15 years full-time in-house at companies, for example, Nokia, HSBC, most recently the pharmaceutical company AstraZeneca. And now I run my own consultancy, Internal Comms Mastery, to help internal communicators be more effective and still coaching leaders on communications. And I'm also very excited to be working for you, Don, as well, and coaching some of your clients, and I'm thoroughly enjoying it.
Pleased to have you here. And knowing you were referred to us by a long-standing coach of ours. And so when he referred you to us, I immediately had you high up in my books because of his standing with us. His track record is just amazing. So instantly I said, okay, I'll take that interview. And here we are today. From what I know, you're coaching our female leaders.
Yes.
And would you be able to kind of go through, of course, keeping anonymous, your start, what it's been like, maybe some of the ups and downs,
Sure. So I've been working for a couple of months now, I think, with two leaders in particular, both female, both kind of mid-senior level, both working in the tech industry in Korea, and both of them really see English and their communication skills as absolutely key to furthering their career aspirations, which I think is absolutely right. So one of them has spent a number of years in a purely Korean speaking environment, and she's very keen to move into an international company. And so her level of English is a little bit more basic. So she and I are working together to really enrich her vocabulary, to give her the confidence to, in particular, walk into a job interview in English, and to not only to understand the questions that she's being asked, but to formulate a good response on the spot. The other individual that I'm working with already works for an international company, which is headquartered in the US. And so she speaks English on a daily basis in her role. So there's less to do in terms of correcting her grammar and enriching her vocabulary. But we're really trying to fine tune her overall communication style so that she can be more influential in her work and to build stronger relationships with her senior stakeholders. So it's two quite different approaches and situations, but there are a lot of commonalities around clarity of thought as much as of speech, and yeah, it's been very interesting working with both of them. For the one whose English is perhaps a little bit more basic, we've taken quite a different approach. So I started off with the Harvard Business Review articles, and read this, and we'll talk about it next week. And so she would come to the coaching session, and I would ask her a number of comprehension questions about the article. But what we found was that she felt she suddenly had to open the article and kind of look for the information that we were trying to find. So what we found was really helpful was to actually provide her with a list of the comprehension questions at the same time as the article, so that she didn't feel under pressure to memorize every last detail, but that she had the time to think about it and really look up the words that were unfamiliar in the dictionary. So we've been looking at that in working in a slightly different way. And what I've also found with that particular client is that, you know, because her ultimate goal is to perform well in an interview situation, it's actually more important for her to improve her listening skills rather than her reading skills. And they're both important, but for her, that's really the key. So what we've been doing has actually been looking at YouTube videos rather than Harvard Business Review articles. Partly because she can double check against subtitles. It gives her the option to slow it down so that she can listen more carefully. And it also allows us to focus on YouTube videos that are particularly about, for example, interview skills and, you know, trends in marketing, and particularly in technology, which is the field that she really needs to really speak that language. So we've been finding that very, very useful. Something else which has been really useful for me over the last few weeks has actually been the process of creating the transcripts as well. So I'm actually trained as a coach back in the UK, and one of the most important things for me in how I approach coaching is being very present with my client during the situation. And so I try not to take extensive notes or to kind of type at the same time, because I kind of feel like if I've got one ear on the client and another in my eyes are on the keyboard, that I'm not really getting 100% on either of them, and she won't feel listened to, and I won't get everything that I want to get. So I use Zoom, I make an audio recording, and after the session has finished, I upload the audio recording as a piece of software online called happyscribe, and that processes the audio file and generates a transcript automatically. It's not perfect, particularly with my client whose English is more basic, because her pronunciation often needs a little bit of work. But I find it really useful to go back through the transcript with the audio recording and make the corrections, because as I go through, I find it's incredibly helpful, because I think, oh yes, you mentioned that, and I meant there's a correction there, or there's a piece of feedback. So I actually do a really thorough review of the whole call, and that means that the feedback I give is of a much higher quality than it might be if I was just kind of typing up my notes. So I think happyscribe is great, and I found it really useful. For my other client who speaks English a lot in the course of her work, I go through the transcripts, and there's it picks it up very well, and there's very little to correct in the way of grammar or pronunciation. But what I'm finding is, because she works in a very fast-paced, high-pressure environment, she's thinking incredibly fast all the time. She's really, she's got a million things to say. And so I'll ask her a question and she'll launch into an answer, but she doesn't really give herself time to think. And sometimes her answers lack focus. So what we're really working on there is to kind of say, actually, it's completely okay to stop, to take a breath, to think about exactly what you want to say, and then to say that, because actually less is more sometimes, and the more focused and clear you can be, the more influence and gravity and authority you'll actually have when you're speaking to somebody senior. So with that particular client, there's a lot more work on mindset, I guess, and on just general approach to her relationships and how she structures what she says, because her actual English is quite good, but we're really working at a much more sophisticated level. And so it's really interesting to have the contrast between the two of them, and I'm learning a huge amount working with them both as well.
3 things, and wonderfully explained. You just notice, even with native speakers, where they have a good command of their English language, some of them have a fantastic command, and that's you, Kathryn.
Oh, thank you, Don. It's very kind of you to say.
Specialist. I mean, and then there are natives that are in awe of that too. You know what I mean? Like, there are people that go, I wish I could speak like that. And fortunately for me, I get to work with coaches that are far superior in their speaking skills than I am, in their communication skills than I am. So I also learn tons, not only through these calls, but through the check-ins that I do with all my coaches. So I'm learning a ton here as well. About 3 things though, I've made a mental note of it. First thing is you adapted, right? Because every client has a different set of needs, different level of fluencies. And so our program is not like a one-size-fits-all model type of program. It's very personalized. And our coaches know that going in. And so with the client that is a bit more beginner, I would say lower level student, you started with the Harvard Business Review, but then you quickly realized that wasn't it for her, right? So instead of just not really being cognizant and not really being aware of your clients and how they're reacting to your teachings and your classes, you reacted and you saw, okay, well, that's not working. And you're able to get that feedback right away and try something new. And with the YouTube and the listening part of it, that's working out much better.
Yes.
So that part I want to highlight for all the coaches here. It's, you have the freedom, and you should be thinking like that, and always thinking clients first, and how can I be a solution provider for them? That should always be on the forefront of their thinking. So awesome. And second thing, now here's where it happens to me. Well, I'll have to get back to that. Oh, the transcript, that's right. So I'm going to leave a link to happyscribe that Kathryn mentioned. I think that's a really a nice hack into getting these transcripts out and making it valuable for the students. I'll leave a link in the abouts, in the abouts page of the YouTube here. or wherever it's going to be released. I'll have a link for coaches to have access to. Thank you for sharing that.
My pleasure. Well,
And
it's been so helpful to me that I'm sure that other coaches can really benefit from it too. So I'm very happy to share that.
absolutely, absolutely. And lastly, the other thing that I wanted to mention was the student with a higher level of fluency. I want to go deeper into this one because you've got a company too that deals with this kind of work. I think specializes in it, which is not teaching English as a second language, but it is how to be a great communicator, right? And oftentimes, I think our students think, well, to be a great communicator, I just need to be fluent in English. But at the highest level in leadership positions, that's only that's a prerequisite, to be honest. So there is an entire branch of skills that you need to acquire to be a great communicator at the executive positions, C-suite levels, senior management positions. So I want to touch base on that here, Kathryn. Based on your professional experience and your career so far, and also dealing with our clients here, what have you seen that makes a fantastic communicator when you're dealing with those senior executives compared to one that is just okay?
So I think you're absolutely right in that command of the English language, it's necessary, but it's not sufficient. So you can have the words, but there's actually, it's a bit like an iceberg. That's kind of the bit at the top that everybody sees. But the
Mm.
reality is that there's a huge amount below the surface that is really going to make all the difference. And so there's part of that is structure and knowing how to organize a piece of communication, whether it's a written message, whether it's a speech, or whatever it is. And so a structure that I've used with my more advanced clients that has helped me enormously throughout my career and helped the leaders that I've coached is a model which has three parts, which is simply what, so what, and now what. And so to explain that
Mm.
structure is just like, well, what is like, right, what's going on? And so what? Well, what does that mean? And then, why is it important? Why should we listen to you? Why should we care? And then number three is now what is, well, what happens next? What do you want us to do about it? What are you going to do about it? What's the way forward? So any message of any length, if you follow that 3-bit structure, you will really kind of get your message across and you will give people 95% of what they need. So
Love
I
it.
use that all the time. So there's language, then there's structure, but then actually the really excellent communicators are the ones who have a huge amount of emotional intelligence, who
Mm.
understand that communication is in fact a two-way thing. They not only listen very closely to their audience and to their employees, but they really care about what they hear back. And they're not afraid to show that they care about their people. They're not afraid to show that they care about the performance of the business and that they care about the way the company does business, that they hold those values very close to their own heart, that there's an authenticity to them that people can really tell. One of the most inspirational CEOs I ever worked for actually wasn't a native English speaker either, but he had been in the military in his home country. He'd been a Marine, and he really understood how important it was to have your men believe in you and trust you and follow you, and that
Mm.
the way to do that was actually to say to them, not just in words but in his entire demeanor, was to say, you know, whatever level of the organization you are at, your work really matters, and
Mm.
without you, this company cannot do what it is here to do, and it cannot serve the people that it exists to serve. So what people are really craving often is, it's not necessarily, you know, more money or a bigger office or a ping pong table or free fruit. It's actually a sense of meaning and purpose from the company that they work for. And if you can show as a leader that you not only understand what that meaning is, but that you really personally hold on to it, then your people will naturally follow you. And, you know, the fact that perhaps you've got a bit of an accent, or, you know, you make the odd grammatical mistake, they won't notice that, because, you know, they won't notice exactly what you're saying, because, you know, what you're not saying will shine out so loudly.
I couldn't agree with you more, Kathryn. Um, and we're starting to see a bit more of that in our leadership, in how companies operate, and how they will withstand the test of time, because it's I believe things have changed in terms of how people communicate and how brands build the relationships with the consumers and with their clients and customers, and it starts from the top, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I think organizations are much more complex. Things move a lot faster. You have much more matrixed organizations. You don't have the situation where you've got one person at the top telling everybody else what to do. I think in most organizations, people fundamentally understand what they need to do, but what they're looking to their leadership to communicate is well, why should we do it, and why does it matter? So as I said, they're really looking for that sense of meaning, I think. And at the moment, you know, we're having this conversation in the midst of the COVID-19 crisis around the world. I think there's never been a greater desire for, or need for, leadership to really step up and be honest and be authentic about exactly what is happening, what the plans are, you know, where, you know, what is happening, why does it matter, and what are we going to do now? Not just in the macro sense of, you know, how the world is going to be, but actually what does it mean for this company? What does it mean for the economy at large? Things are likely to be very challenging for pretty much everybody on the planet for the foreseeable future. That leadership, communications has never been more important to try and keep the wheels on the wagon and the economy moving.
Agreed, wholeheartedly. Now, Kathryn, I wanted to go take a different approach here. So,
sure,
we're still on this subject because I think this is super important. I want to, we can possibly just end on this this topic. Is a lot of our clients, their objective when they enter our program is to become a more fluent speaker, whether it's from a beginner level to reaching intermediate level, from intermediate to upper intermediate, from being a advanced level student to become really professional speaker.
Mm-hmm.
So those are the objectives. They come and say, hey, I want to work on my presentation skills. I want to work on how to deliver conference calls, business emails, etc. Very few, it's very rare that we get clients that ask me before they join, say, can I improve on emotional intelligence? Can I improve on how to deal with different stakeholders within my organization, and how to change my tone and my communication so I can really connect with them, build relationships. And that's pretty high level thinking. But at the same time, those are the more fluent speakers that we bring on, advanced level speakers. What is your method, and what is your, I would say, what would your roadmap be for clients that enter our program and that are aspiring to be, you know, the top, highest levels of leadership within the organization, whether it's APAC, whether it's HQ, and they already have a very strong command of the English language, but they're looking for that next level jump, right?
Yeah.
It's a loaded question, though, to be honest. It's a loaded one. So my apologies there.
Not at all. Well, this is kind of what I'm seeing at this point with my more advanced client. So if they're already at a pretty advanced level in terms of vocabulary and grammar, and there's not a lot to kind of really sort of teach them, we can make their accent a little bit better, and we can work on, you know, stripping out the ums and the ahs and that kind of fine tuning. But really at that stage, it's really about a mindset shift. It's really about unlocking the levels of confidence that will allow them to go into a senior stakeholder meeting and be persuasive, be influential, feel that they are not at a disadvantage because they're not a native English speaker, to help them think of themselves as somebody who really does have a very strong command, to focus on the 90% that they have rather than the 10% that they don't, because that kind of confidence will take you a long way. And the other thing that I try to help them realize in that mindset shift is that, you know, you can already speak English very well. The skill that you need to learn to really become influential is to listen. That there's a desire to be like, I speak English brilliantly and I'm just going to speak at you and I'm going to speak at you and I'm going to speak at you, and kind of they wonder why the senior stakeholders are a little kind of bored or switched off, is actually to say, okay, this is about a dialogue, this is about a conversation. You can speak perfectly well. Your next task is to read them and listen, and more importantly, to hear what often isn't being said. And that's the next skill to master. But often they may not realize that that is the case when they come to us and say, I want to be a better English speaker. It's kind of the wrong game.
You know, Kathryn, they do ask, and it is, when they do say, you know, Don, I do want to focus on the listening comprehension, it's due to the fact that at that level of leadership and position, they're dealing with topics unrelated to business. Mm-hmm. And so because they've been in that industry or that, I guess, topic for 20, 25 years, they know all the vocabulary words, all the business jargon that comes out of that. Mm-hmm. But now they have more opportunities to speak on topics related to politics, economics, sports, philosophy, trends. And that's what they're having a hard time with, because they understand that gap. They know that communication is a two-way street. And if they have trouble comprehending pretty much what everything is being said, they lose their confidence. Mm. So on that note, because there's so many things I want to cover with you, Kathryn. This could be a 3-part video. And I've got series of questions, but we are out of time.
I'll come back for the sequel.
Is there, because I know your background, you can speak French, you can speak multiple languages. So you've gone that route and you've acquired different languages under your belt, which is unbelievable. What has helped you significantly in the listening and comprehension aspect of acquiring a second language?
I will tell you, I learnt French at school to a very high level to a teacher who refused point blank ever to speak English to us. So in the classroom, in the corridor, if you crossed his path, forget it. He was speaking French to you and he expected you to understand it. And we learnt to a very high standard. But one of the things that he would set us as homework was he would record news stories from French radio onto cassettes and would set us a bunch of questions and be like, right, go and listen to the French news. And so we would answer the comprehension questions. So telling my clients is, get a subscription subscribe to podcasts, subscribe to audiobooks, whether it's on politics or business or sport, whatever's interesting to you, because if you're not interested, then you probably won't, listen to it. But on topics that interest you in English, and if you have to slow them down so that you understand it. But I would credit that with a lot of, with really speeding up my language learning, is listening to media and reading the newspapers in other languages. So if that's one thing that I would advise my clients to do outside of the lesson to improve their English, is to really immerse themselves in English language media, and they'll not only improve their skills and their vocabulary, but they'll expand their general knowledge in English and be much more able to have those kinds of conversations with senior executives that are related to more than just, you know, their quarterly sales targets or, you know, the latest, you know, marketing initiative.
Kathryn, I couldn't agree with you more, because that's what I teach. But I'd like to add one more point.
Go on.
So going to your example, your teacher had you perform an action based on the listening activity, correct?
Correct.
Okay. If you can remember back, how much stress level was involved in that?
How much stress level?
And I'll give you a comparison. When you're watching, let's say, a movie in French, when you're speaking with your buddies in French, compared to that memory where your teacher says, "Hey, listen to this media. Here's some comprehension questions," and I'm gonna comparable.
So the way that I would frame that would be to say there was a degree of stress involved in it. We couldn't slow it down. We just had to kind of it was on us to keep it up. And so, you know, with technology now, you can slow it down and you can get transcripts and stuff. I didn't find it that stressful because I framed it in such a way that I knew that there was an exam coming at the end of the year when I would be given a piece of listening comprehension, and I would have to get those right, and, you know, my grades would depend on that. So I knew that a small amount of stress on a weekly basis through the year meant significantly less stress at the end of the year, because I knew that this would actually help me along the way. So I would say, you know, to clients in a similar situation who are kind of performing this action, is like, yes, it will be a little bit stressful, and you're worried about making mistakes, and you don't want to come to the coaching session and get things wrong. But the reality is that, like the exam that I would have to sit at the end of the year, there is going to come a time when my client is in an interview situation for a role with Apple or Google or whoever, and she is going to be asked questions in English. And a little bit of stress every week along the way is all going to be worth it when she gets her dream job. The stress along the way will be nothing compared to the stress of walking into that interview unprepared or not getting the job that she wants because she didn't do it along the way. So that's how I would frame that stress.
Yes. And the larger point to that, which is I'm agreeing with everything that you're saying.
That's good.
Is that when there is a little bit of stress, there tends to be high performance.
Yes.
And quite simply, just watching the news or watching a movie on Netflix, which is a lot of people are doing these days, could add to maybe your vanity or how good you feel about performing that kind of task. But in reality, in terms of actual performance and adding to maybe your improvement in your language, is not much. So what I always tell to my students is there must be an action performed when you're performing such an exercise, especially with listening, because that adds to not only the retention, but also for your ability to use it in real life. And so, Kathryn, this is a shameful plug-in, but I'm gonna have to do it anyways. It happens so naturally, and our program, it's really, coaches are driving our company forward, and it's, you know, it's the reason why clients, high-level clients, are joining our program, because they want to be connected to people like yourself, Kathryn. I still don't know any other platform or business out there that does what we do, and I'm incredibly grateful to be in a position to help more people along the way here. But But there's a second component, Kathryn, and it's the self-study.
Yes.
It's if the coaches are the arms and the self-study are the legs. And there's been a lot of development over the past couple of years on how can we have a self-study program that really fits in with their clients, because they're very busy, but at the same time they have that hunger to improve. So it's finding that right balance, and I think we hit a chord. I think we got it right. So we're launching our updated version of our self-study program to all of our clients that are actively learning today. So for them, they'll receive almost like a trial into our updated version, right? And from there, they can make a decision. After about a month of trying it out, they can continue, and that's their choice. But for anyone else that wants to get going on a daily routine and really improve on their listening comprehension, I'll leave a link in the YouTube or any other media outlets that I'm releasing this video to. I'm going to have a link to the self-study program that I've just mentioned, and it's going to be really powerful stuff. Like you said, if you add a little bit of stress each week, maybe a year from now, maybe 6 months from a year from now, when you get that position or that dream job or whatever it is that you're going to have to perform, it's all going to be worth it. So it's adding that work now so that you can reap that huge benefit later on down the line. So I'm going to offer that to our students and our soon-to-be clients in the link below, like this. And Kathryn, let's leave it with that. Is there any lasting remarks or anything that you want to share with the coaches that are tuning in, or any clients that are soon to be joining our program? Anything before we close today?
Just that I am really enjoying the education that I'm getting from the clients. That we were talking earlier about communication being very much a two-way street, and that's very much my experience of working with the clients as well, is that I'm learning a huge amount about the companies that they work for and the situations that they're facing, but also about the intricacies of the English language and psychology and coaching, and it's helping me be better as well. So I'm really grateful for the opportunity, and I'm looking forward to working with more in future.
100%, Kathryn. And on behalf of my team and all of our clients that are going to be working with you, couldn't be happier, couldn't be more blessed to have you on board and having you share your years of experience in this work to our clients so that they can move forward, break through that barrier, break through that that wall that's been in front of them for so long. And so for you to be that person for them, the mentor, the coach, the friend, grateful.
Yeah, there's not. Oh, I hope so. I mean, there's really nothing more gratifying for me than to see one of your clients achieve their goals and their ambitions and get to where they want to be through better communication skills. So that's wonderful.
All right, Kathryn, that's a wrap. And
great.
Thank you so much. I will probably see you in our next check-in call in a short while.
Sounds great.
Yeah.
Sounds perfect. All right. Thanks, Don. Speak to you soon.
Thank you.